My advice would be just to always put the feelers out. It doesn't hurt to send an email or talk to people or ask for advice in terms of direction. From my experience, I took a hunch and sent an email. I didn't know what was to come of it. I didn't know the person I was emailing. At the end of the day, follow your dream. If you do that, you'll be lucky enough to get an opportunity or get a foot in the door. Once you get that, just relish it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. My name is James Grigson, and today I'm joined by the Collingwood Football Club sports scientist, Brendan Lazarus. Brendan, thanks for coming on, mate.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me.
It's a fascinating time right now to be a football fan. Where in the world are you? Are you traveling with the team? What's going on with you at the moment?
No, I'm currently in Melbourne. The team's up in Perth, in Joondalup, in their hub at the moment, with a number of restrictions and also having a young baby. I've remained in Melbourne, so touching base with the team from here and just keeping updated as much as I can.
Congratulations on the bub, mate. How old is
Thank
baby?
you. She's 3 months. 3 months. Yeah.
Oh, great. You be wrapped.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a silver lining. Get to spend time at home with the wife and with the young child. But miss out on all the action up there in Perth. So, but it's exciting time for me.
Yeah, and for those that don't know that are watching, the Collingwood Football Club and AFL Club, Australian Rules Football Club in Australia, they've been pushed to somewhat of a, you call it a bubble, almost like the NBA in Florida, except for there are a number, I think there's about 2 Melbourne-based teams over there at the moment, just correct me if I'm wrong, and they're bubbled on the west coast of Australia with the 2 West Australian teams, of course, quarantining and still being able to play some games and matches. When are they coming back, mate? How many more weeks until they come back?
I think it was a 4-week total hub. So I think they've been there for, 1 week now. And then they'll play against Geelong this Thursday night, and then against West Coast the following week, and I'm assuming Fremantle the following week.
Yeah, they're doing it, basically releasing fixtures every 4 weeks, right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So they because things are rapidly changing almost every day, so the AFL are having to sort of adjust week by week or round by round, I guess. Yeah.
And what's the difference for your role, right? So now you're remote, so you're in Melbourne, and they're 4.5 hours, 4 hours away. How are you managing that? So I know as a sports scientist, your role very, very data heavy, but also very people heavy, right? You're going to have to communicate that information to various stakeholders, make sense of it, speak the lingo to the right people. How are you going and getting your job done while being remote?
It's really challenging at the moment. So, like you said, a lot of the role is on the tools, so using GPS and monitoring systems, things like that. So I'm not able to access those things. So our high performance manager has assumed those roles in terms of running those systems. So it's more just keeping in contact with our team, with our performance team and our medical team. And staying, as up to date as possible, and providing, assistance where I can in terms of running the system, and also advice in terms of load monitoring, and various other sort of details related to player management.
So that would be just a lot of, from my interpretation. So I've seen a lot of people do a couple of different things, right? So they might be, I know it just sounds simple, but a lot of people just go, I need to FaceTime this person. And it's all about having to FaceTime so they can see them. And then, hey, I've just sent you an email. Take a look at the email. Let's sit over FaceTime now so I can watch you, watch the Excel, and we can talk this through. Some people obviously just want to email and type. I know it sounds like a very small thing, but how have you combat those things? Because typically, right, you're face to face with this person potentially, and you're
Yep.
looking at the screen, you're saying, look at this, look at that. How are you getting around just those very small things?
So a lot of phone calls. So I've been in contact quite a bit with our high performance manager, and just sort of talking through things. And we have sort of shared a few emails. So
Yep.
sending data. He's sort of getting a hang of how I report things as well. So
Yeah.
sort of trying to make it as close as possible in terms of how I report things. So yeah, a lot of phone conversations. We have video chatted as well to talk through things as well. So yeah, it's just trying to communicate as much as possible, because it's very hard being away, and you can miss a lot of things, even in a couple of days. So our high performance manager is quite aware of that. So he's been really good at keeping in contact with myself and a few of the other guys that aren't up at the hub at the moment. So which is a really important aspect of our program, which is just keeping that communication solid throughout.
That's great, mate. That's it's good to hear. Communication often isn't done well when you can look at people. So I'm glad to hear that they've prioritized
Yeah.
that. I want to take a step back through your journey, my friend. You're a Deakin
Sure.
University graduate, and you've gone through and from what I can see here, honors, and then I believe you finished your PhD. Is that correct? Last year?
Well, I'm just in the final stages of finishing up the exam. Very close, yeah. So just finishing up the examiner report. So I was actually working on it yesterday. So hopefully it should be done very, very soon. Fingers crossed. And excited to finally wrap it up.
Yeah, I've heard from so many people. It's almost like the first 90%. Yes, it's hard, but you can get it done. It's that last 10%, just trying to get over the line, all the corrections, all of that. So my thoughts are with you, mate.
Thank you.
Doesn't sound fun. I wanted to talk through your thought process though. So 2007, you started your journey at Deakin, just in your undergraduate degree, and then you come through the ranks. You began, as an honours student, and then started working as at the Clayton Football Club as well, picking up a few roles around health clubs before transitioning to Collingwood in 2017. The journey for you through academia and then through the practical world, I'm very fascinated by, and particularly fascinated by the fact that you got into the Collingwood Football Club and then also decided to do or continue on, I should say, with your PhD. A lot of people, when they get that first, big practical role or big practical breakthrough, such as one at a club like Collingwood, wouldn't necessarily continue on with the PhD, or may put the PhD on hold. I know a few people that have done that. Talk me through your thought process on that and the journey behind that, and also, where you see the priorities of a PhD fitting in terms of, okay, I weight my practical experience here versus my academic prowess here. How did you think all those things through?
Started at Deakin a long time ago now, it seems. And I just knew that I wanted to work in sport. I love sport. So starting that sports science degree at Deakin, it's very knowledge, has a lot of knowledge, but it can be quite general at times. So I had to work out, which direction I wanted to take, and then somehow landed up doing an honours and switching over to Victoria Uni, having no idea what an honours was or even how to conduct a research project. So that was a learning experience in itself. And an honours year is quite tough. It is, a research project crammed into sort of 8 months.
Yep.
So it can be quite challenging, but quite rewarding, because it sort of kickstarts your thought process, thinking outside the box, how to, really manage your time, manage problems, solve problems, things like that. So I was lucky enough to get into contact with Professor Rob Augie at Vic Uni, and that was purely through another contact at Deakin. So I'd never met him. I emailed him out of the blue, just saying this is, what I wanted to do. And at the time he was working as a adjunct position with the Western Bulldogs. So I thought, that could be a segue into the AFL. So I met with him. My plan was to do a project with the Western Bulldogs at the time. Unfortunately, the time frame didn't work out, so I wasn't able to start a project on time with, I think it was the pre-season at the time. So that sort of fell through. And then I started another project idea with the AIS and Professor Alan Hahn, who's, the godfather of sports science. And I was lucky enough to work with him and finish that up. And then, I applied to go through a scholarship to do a PhD. Same with Rob Augie. Unfortunately, I didn't get it at the time, so then I had to sort of go away and work for a year. So I spent some time in some gyms, getting some sort of practical experience working with, different populations of people. And then I was lucky enough to, again, get another offer. And I strongly considered, what to do at the time. And it was a decision I had to make, whether to keep working in the workforce or, sort of put that on hold and then restart, the research life again. And in my mind, it was, I'm probably never going to get this opportunity again. So I took it up and started that process. And it was sort of a blank slate. So Rob and I, we sort of put our heads together and, really came up with, what we could do in terms of research, a research project. And again, I was, adamant, I want to work in AFL. I want the project to be in AFL. And we're lucky enough to have a few contacts at a few different clubs. Again, Western Bulldogs is, a heavy partner with Victoria Uni, and they have a lot of honours and PhD students going through. So they were the first port of call. And again, unfortunately, it must be something about me and the Bulldogs, but I wasn't able to get a project going at the time. There was a few other students coming through that had already started, and it was go back to the drawing board, reach out to another few clubs, and lucky enough that Collingwood were actually interested in the project that we were looking at conducting. I basically started there. I think it was the pre-season of 2016, just as a student, just thrust into the environment.
Okay, yep.
And it was purely, I'm going to, get my data collection, which was data that was already being collected. So it was more sort of data mining through stuff that, was already being collected. So that was the benefit of the project, where we didn't have to implement any sort of tests or any sort of data collection or invasive techniques or anything like that. So I was lucky enough to be put into the environment where I was essentially an assistant to the sports scientist at the time. And they allowed the freedom for me to be there as much as I wanted, and work on my thesis as much as I wanted as well. So it was, you can be here as much as you want to, because I was on a scholarship. So I was receiving an income from the university, and my time was, used to gain experience in the field.
Very lucky, mate. That sounds like a tremendous opportunity at the time. And then when was the transition to being an actual Collingwood employee? When did that happen? Did that happen in 2017?
So no, I was there through sort of the early stages of 2016 and 2017. And then the opportunity came at the end of the 2017 season. So the club had a bit of a review, had made a few changes to staffing, and I was just lucky enough. I was at the right place at the right time. Okay. Yeah. The sports scientist that I was working with at the time, he got promoted to high performance manager, and I'd been working closely with him for 2 years. And he saw the opportunity for me to assume his role as sports scientist, purely because I'd known the system, I'd known the program, I'd known the players, and how everything worked. And yeah, it made sense for the club to, and that they sort of wanting to promote within as well. So
Yep.
They sort of adopted that throughout a few different departments as well. So I was, just lucky. I was at the right place at the right time, and started full time for the 2018 season.
Mate, that's amazing. The thought process during the PhD, right? So when you got you're on the university books, you're in the salary from the university, and you're told, okay, just come in, as much as you want. What was your thought process then? The thought process when people are given so much rope, it's either I'm just going to jump in and make the most of it. But then, some people also might tend to think, actually, let me just hang back. I'll do what I need to do at the club, but I'm not being paid by the club. I'm paid to be doing my thesis, and I want to get my thesis done. And they may not necessarily see that opportunity at a club to be able to really get their teeth in and essentially do what you did, which was form relationships and ultimately get that easy promotion. Easy, I should say, as in, someone just went, let's go, let's move up the chain. What was your thought process back then? Did you really see that as a genuine opportunity to climb up and get a full-time job at the club?
Oh, well, not at the time. It's a challenging sort of setup because it's an opportunity of a lifetime to work, or to be a part of one of the biggest clubs in the AFL. So I sort of adopted the mantra of, I'm there to learn. I'm not going to get this opportunity again, so I'm going to try and learn as much as I can. So I wasn't there full time. I was there sort of on the preseason schedule. I was there on the main training days. So on the days off and sort of the recovery days, things like that, I wasn't in. So I was there on the main days from the morning to the afternoon. And then when sort of things started slowing down during the day, the late afternoon, I'd sort of start working on my thesis while I was at the club. So I'd still be able to have conversations, talk to staff, talk to players that were available. So it was sort of trying to find a balance, because it would be really challenging to either throw yourself all into say the job, or throw yourself all into your thesis. So, and then you're not really sort of benefiting. So I really tried to strike a balance between regaining, valuable experience, at the same time working on, important aspects of my thesis as well. So that could progress at a good rate and not sort of get stuck behind. So yeah, it was more about just striking a balance between the two, to basically balance the practical experience as well as the sort of academia research side.
Interesting. And I think just to take a couple of steps back, when I was looking to be a sports scientist or a strength and conditioning coach and I was studying, I had the same thought that you had. I just want to work in sport. And those words, I just want to work in sport, actually were kind of a detriment to my academic journey, because I didn't so much care for university studies, honors, masters, PhDs. I wasn't that way minded at all, because I just wanted to work in sport. So I wanted to actually get in. I didn't care if it was an internship or a part-time role. I just wanted to get in and get my hands dirty. And I kind of regret that a little bit, because I didn't quite understand the impact embedding yourself in a bit more of the academic world can have. And, you're proof of that. Did anyone early on kind of guide you and say, hey, mate, just, get your master's or get your PhD or get your honors, because you're going to have these opportunities come up? Or was that just something that you knew that you had to do to become more employable? What was the thought process in furthering your academic prowess in relation to job opportunities?
It's funny because I, as crazy as it sounds, I sort of went with the flow. At the end of my undergraduate, I was sort of at this junction of where to from here. It was sort of, I wasn't in a clear direction path to what I wanted to do. I majored in exercise physiology and sports nutrition, purely because of the electives that I'd chosen. And like I said, I reached out to a professor at Deakin to say, and it was just purely a conversation of, what, where to next, basically. And he said, look, if you're going to go exercise physiology, it's a little bit more clinical, rehab, and working in a clinical setting. So he sort of spelt it out of, that you go that way, or you want to go more practical, working in the field, and then, I would suggest this. So it was more the conversation I had with Rob Orgy that sort of opened up, I guess, the can of worms at the end of the day, to that sort of research. So I really didn't understand the pathway that it took. I sort of just went with the flow. And at the start, if you'd said, you'd be studying for 7 more years after, or 8 more years after an undergrad, I'd be, you're crazy. But it was sort of just the path that, I just followed it as it went, and it opened new opportunities at every sort of step that I took. So doing a PhD wasn't something that I thought that, I'd end up doing. It was towards the end of the honours where Rob was like, I think you can do this, and it'll, set you up for, a really, strong career path. And as daunting as it sounds, I was like, yeah, let's do this. I got through an honours year, so I thought, let's go through, go through it all again times 10. So yeah, it was more sort of go with the flow. And then once I sort of got a little bit more direction, it was just follow the path, and see, where it took me to get to sort of what I was aiming for, which was to, put my foot in the door at an AFL club, and sort of try and get into the industry, which I was lucky enough to do.
That's amazing. And I think that's a true value to, trusting a mentor, or having a good mentor, and then trusting what they say. It seems like that was, Rob was very much influential in your decisions, and it paid off, essentially. Is there any thoughts or words that you would have for young people around picking the right mentor, or how to find the right mentor? I don't necessarily like this conversation topic because it is very much a go with the flow, and people just crop up and you go, oh, I like that person. But I always tend to say it's trust. It's not necessarily the experience that person has. It's as long as you trust them, and they have to be credible to a certain extent, but I wouldn't hold credibility above the trust or the vibe that I have with that individual. What would you say for people that are kind of looking out for a mentor, or seeking one out at the moment?
Yeah, it's like, again, I was lucky. I reached out to Rob on a hunch, and he happened to respond to me. So it was more, I was directed to him, and it was funny. There was 2 people that I was recommended. One was Rob Orgy. One was Paul Gaston, who was another professor at Deakin, and highly respected. And something just pulled me towards Rob. I can't say exactly what it was, but the thing that sort of drew me to Rob in a mentor was his obviously his experience. He's worked in the industry for decades, highly experienced and knowledgeable, but it was also his approach to research, and his sort of demeanor. He wasn't one to hand feed his students. He really taught me how to think outside the box, think on my own, and really problem solve certain things. Even to this day, it's still the same, where he will never give you the answer. He wants you to, work out the problem on your own. And that's something that really drew me to him, because I didn't want to be hand-fed this experience. It's something that you have to, be able to grow and learn. And he's taught me skills that, I apply now in the industry, and have really developed myself as an academic, and one as, as a staff member in the industry. So it sort of really was beneficial to my career, that approach. And that's something that drew me to him. So that doesn't work for everyone. So it's really sort of finding out what works for you, and finding someone that sort of fits that mold, that can sort of drive you, motivate you, and keep you on track, to help you achieve what you want to achieve. So it is a little bit of a personal preference, at the end of the day, but that was something that I really sort of drew to in his personality. Yeah,
and I think it also would be people, to your point, it'd be people looking at what teaching styles worked for them when they were younger, like that. Based off of your advice, that's what I would be doing if I was listening to that right now. I'd go, okay, when I was in high school or at university, what teaching styles worked, and almost try and find those traits out in certain individuals. I want to just take a quick shift towards almost a question that I hear around from people that I speak with that are kind of younger in the industry, or don't necessarily know what a sports scientist do. They're like us. They just want to work in sport, and they go, oh, that, I want to do that. What does a sports scientist do on game day? So the pinnacle of what every person wants to do when they want to work in sport is be there on game day and experience the match from the best seat in the house. What your role in particular as a sports scientist, what does a typical game day look like?
So my main role on game day is running the GPS system. So during a game, we track our athletes with little devices that sit in the jerseys, and I have a laptop that connects me to those devices, that helps me track how far they've run, how fast they've run, and the various of different parameters that help me monitor the players in game. Amongst that, I have conversations with our high performance manager to help monitor fatigue levels when players need to be rotated, and just advice on how players are physically performing. I do have conversations to line coaches sometimes as well, in terms of how their players are performing in their position, in just a feedback type setup. That's the main sort of role that I assume on game day, amongst a number of other things.
And that's all from the dugout?
Yes. So it's changed a little bit. My first year in 2018, I was on the bench, and I had direct line of communication to our high performance manager. 2019, I was up in the coach's box, and the lines of communication were purely from top to bottom, because the AFL had put restrictions on the number of people that each club could allow on the bench. And then, this year's a whole different kettle of fish. So, but I am on the sort of on the extended bench, sort of a little bit more further out to where the players sit. But I am on the bench, so again, have that direct line of communication to a high performance manager and the line coaches too.
Is there any communication with the players at all to kind of get a feel for internal and external loads together from your perspective, so then you can feed that communication to the line coaches and high performance managers?
Not directly during the game. It's very rare that a player will sort of want to know what they're doing.
It's more. So it was more so. Sorry, just to rephrase, like you getting that feedback from them, necessarily how they're feeling, not necessarily you telling them their distances or anything like that. It's just you getting some of that subjective information, I guess, to combine with objective to have a bit more of a different opinion, or a more data-rich opinion, essentially, to those people. Does that happen at all on the bench, or not really? You just stick with the objective?
So you mean players communicating to me?
Yes.
Yeah, again, very, very rarely. They're sort of really focused in on the game.
Yep.
You know, they probably forget that they're even wearing a GPS
All
unit.
of that. Yeah.
So they're sort of really heavily focused into the game. So it's more communication to their line coach, and then they would relay that feedback. Back to me or back to the player, or back to a high performance manager who's sort of managing our rotations. So the players are sort of really narrowed in on the game, and their focus is really pinpoint to what's going on in front of them. So it'd be hard to focus on anything else at that time. So I sort of I keep to the main sources of communication, not to bug them or or stray their focus away from the game.
No, that's fine. I was just curious to see, where the players would go to if they were feeling something. Who would they speak to? And I guess it's either their line manager or the high performance manager. But yeah, game day as a sports scientist is something or a question that I've always wondered what they would do, and I'm sure other people when they're looking to get into being a sports scientist, then they would be thinking the same thing and asking the same questions. Speaking of people that are getting into the industry, what I'd like to do at the end is just ask the guests whether they have any words for people that are just starting out in the industry, or maybe they've finished their undergrad, or maybe they're at a transition period in their career and they're looking for a new venture. That it doesn't have to be under 30. It can be all ages. What is the advice that you would have for people looking for a new opportunity, and particularly for young people in the industry looking to cut their teeth and get amongst it? What words would you have to say for them?
My advice would be just to always put the feelers out. It doesn't hurt to send an email or talk to people or ask for advice in terms of direction. From my experience, I took a hunch and sent an email, and I was lucky enough to benefit from that situation. I didn't know what was to come of it. I didn't know the person I was emailing. It was purely just taking a shot at it. So my advice would be to always try, put out feelers, talk to people, get some advice, and at the end of the day, follow your dream. Work at it. If there's something that you want to achieve, then work as hard as you can to try and achieve that. And if you do that, you'll be lucky enough to get an opportunity or get a foot in the door. And once you get that, just relish it and work at it till you achieve it.
Mate, that's perfect. Couldn't think of a better way to end it. I will say on a personal note, as a West Coast fan, it's been terrible to look at that shirt for the last 30 minutes, but it's been great to speak to you, mate. Really appreciate the time that you've given us and the people watching. For those that are watching and you liked what you saw, you can click down here to subscribe. If you want to watch our last video with the Dutch Olympic Committee strength and conditioning coach for the volleyball team, that's a mouthful, Brett Lawson, that video is up here. For James and Brendan, thank you very much for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, James.